How's everybody doing today?
We're
We're gonna make some lemon bars today. You guys like lemons? No, Iris likes lemons. She's my lemon girl.
She says you're a lemon girl.
So I've got you guys all muted now. And I just want to make sure that we've got some things to work with today. So if you haven't already, make sure you've preset your oven to 350, because this is a little bit of a tricky class. We're actually gonna bake part of our dish while we're making the other part. It's the first time I've tried this, but when I used to do this class at Piccadilly, I didn't really have the ability to do that at the same time because we were doing it in a separate room. So I did this other lemon bar recipe that I really didn't like as much, and this is really the better one. So we're just gonna give it a go. We're gonna just try it, we'll all work together. If your butter is not soft, then pop it in the microwave for like 15 seconds. We just want it soft but not fully melted. So I found 15 seconds worked for me. And then if you have a juicer, that's helpful, but we don't need it. I'll show you another way we can do it. And make sure we've got a whisk and a grater of some sort for lemon zest. So you could do, I've got a zester or a grater, or if you don't have either one of those, there is a way we can do it by peeling it and then we'll cut the edges. So there's lots of options that we'll be able to do together. So what we're gonna start with, oh, and I should have mentioned if you have an 8x8 or 9x9 pan or muffin tins. So I tested the recipe this time, this week with the muffin tins, and it actually, they turned out quite nice. So it's another option for you. It was the first time, so I tested that just in case. I didn't know if everybody has square pans or not. So if you don't, muffin tin's gonna work great. So we'll get started. What we're gonna do is first make the base. So our lemon bars are like a shortbread cookie base and a lemon custard kind of topping. So the base is really simple. It's just 3 ingredients, but we're gonna need a 1/4 measuring cup, and we're gonna need a tablespoon to measure. So if you don't have those yet, I'll give you a second to grab those. We need a 1/4 cup and a tablespoon. And with our 1/4 cup, we're going to dig into our powdered sugar bag. And that you'll know because it's gonna look like white fluffy powder. So will the flour, but the white fluffy powder is it's gonna be a little bit less. It'll be a smaller bag. It'll be really white, and you can put your finger in and taste it. And it's probably gonna taste sweet. So we wanna take a 1/4 cup out of our powdered sugar bag, and we're gonna put that into our first mixing bowl. So we just want a 1/4 cup, and then we'll put it into our mixing bowl, which my mixing bowl is off camera, so I'm actually doing that. Easy enough. So we have our 1/4 cup of powdered sugar. The next thing we're gonna do, this is a little tricky, but it's pretty easy once you get it. I gave you a bag of flour, and we need to reserve 2 tablespoons out of that flour. You can even just use your little 1/4 cup you just used to measure. We're gonna take 2 tablespoons out of that bag of flour, and we're just gonna put it into the 1/4 cup, and we're gonna set that 1/4 cup aside. So just take 2 tablespoons out of the flour. We just need this for the second part, and then the rest we're gonna dump into the bowl. So I've taken my 2 tablespoons out, and I've set that aside. And now we can put the bag of flour in with your powdered sugar. So once you take your 2 tablespoons out, put the bag of flour, dump it right into your mixing bowl. And obviously, if you're doing this recipe without my ingredients bag, then you probably don't need to do that. You'll just need 1 cup of flour. Okay, so we've got the bag of flour minus the 2 tablespoons in our bowl, and we put in the 1/4 cup of the powdered sugar into our bowl. We're gonna mix that around a little bit, and then we're gonna add our butter. Now, to do the mixing, if you have a pastry cutter, that's gonna be useful. If you don't, if you have a fork or a big fork, that's also helpful. So whatever you have, and then we're gonna actually use our hands in a minute to mix the rest through. So I've just mixed that powdered sugar and the flour just to get it mixed up. And now we're gonna add our butter to that. So you can add it all in one clump, you can break it apart, put it in. We're gonna just mix this together. And with the fork or the pastry cutter, whatever you have, when you're mixing it, it's gonna end up looking like little kind of crumbly bits. The butter's just gonna break up enough that it's
Did
gonna
you
get
say the stick of butter?
the whole stick of butter.
Did
Yeah.
you say the whole? Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, that's okay. Just make sure it's soft. If it's not soft, pop it in the microwave for 15 seconds. So we get about halfway there with our fork or our pastry cutter, whatever you're using. We get almost there. But the best way to really get this combined is by just going in there with our hands. And our hands might get a little messy, that's all right. We can wipe those off. If you have a wet paper towel or something handy, you'll want that. Or we'll give time to wash hands afterwards. But really, what we're gonna wanna do is start grabbing our flour mixture. I just kind of squeeze it and I work that butter in. So it eventually is gonna feel like you can squeeze it and it's gonna stay together. We just wanna incorporate all the dry flour bits. It's a good sensory activity. So you can put your fingers in, it's okay. I mean, look, I got monster crazy hands here, but I just found that this was the easiest way to do it. Probably should have taken my rings off ahead of time, but we'll just not worry about that. Feels nice. It feels nice and soft. Now, all those kids that are making their parents sous chefs do that because they don't want to touch it. Let's just put your hands in and touch it. You'll be fine. You can squeeze it. So now you can see it sort of come together and it almost kind of sticks together if you grab a little bit. That's perfect consistency that we want. We don't necessarily need to wipe our hands yet because we've got one more thing that we're going to use our hands for. Now, if you are using the square pan, you can put your parchment paper in there and then put your dough in there and we're going to press our dough down. So you can wipe some of it off your hands. If you've got big clumps on your fingers, you can lightly wipe your fingers into your bowl. And I should have mentioned, I hope you have clean hands to start today. But it'll all bake off at the end. It'll be fine. If you're using the muffin tins, then I found it's about a tablespoon and a half of the dough in each of the tins. So is anyone using muffin tins? I see Nico's using one. So it's about, I put a tablespoon in each muffin tin. I made 12. And then I went back and I think I was able to get either one more or a half. So what we'll do is press it down. So if you're putting it into your square pan right now, you want to press it down, press it into the edges. It's going to be pretty thin, but that's okay. It's just going to be like a little cookie crust. and I greased these muffin tins. So if you are using the muffin tins, I hope you grease them. They will be a little sticky. Just use your fingers and press it down. It's no big special way to do it.
Allison, if you're using the 9x9, you put parchment paper over it, you said?
Parchment paper under, yeah, put parchment paper, lay that in there first. And I'll show you.
Oh,
You're gonna lay it in and just set the dough on top and just press it down. So I made this 9x9 earlier so I wouldn't have to run to the oven. But yeah, it's gonna be thin, but it'll be fine. And you just use your fingers to press it down. We're gonna cover it up anyway, so it doesn't have to look any way, shape, or form.
Allison, Russell requested to tell you that the reason he's not doing it with his hands is because he zested his finger and got a.
Oh, I understand. Thank you for letting me know, Russell. I appreciate
It was right after I said, "Don't zest your finger."
that.
And
You know what? It's just gonna add a little bit of flavor to the lemon bars. Yeah, that can be a little stingy when we're zesting and we accidentally get our skin.
Mhm.
That's kind of a tricky thing to do, but I'm glad you did that, Russell. That's great. Not do it to your finger, but I'm glad you were zesting. That's a,
Yeah, Russell wants to know if anybody else zested themselves.
oh, did anyone else get a little bit of themselves in their zesting this morning? If you've zested any in advance? No?
Well, it looks like you're the only.
I'm sure, you know what, Russell, I have done that a million times. So you're in good company, dude. Okay, so once you have your dough flattened, pressed into either your pan or your baking cup or your muffin cups, then we're gonna pop those into your 350 oven for about 15 minutes. And if we've timed this correctly, at the end, we'll be putting our lemon topping on it and then putting it back in the oven. So it doesn't have to cool in between. We're gonna bake it. While we're baking it, we're gonna make our lemon topping. And then as soon as it comes out of the oven, we'll pour our lemon topping on top. And then we'll put it back in the oven for another 15 or so. So once you've done that, you put it in the oven, you'll probably wanna either wash your hands off or wipe them down really, really good. Maybe a little slippery.
What'd you do if your hands aren't messy?
Then you are super cool and you just hang on a minute. If you're zesting, you can keep zesting. You're gonna zest into a new bowl or you're gonna zest into, if your bowl with the dough is,
Paper?
Yeah.
the bowl with the dough is empty now, you could even wipe that out if you don't feel like washing two bowls.
But it's after we bake more. Allison, how long do we put the
Short put
base
in.
in for?
About 15 minutes.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yep. So I did 15 minutes for my 9x9. It could have done maybe a couple more minutes, but it's actually cooked through. It'll be fine because we're gonna bake it again with the lemon topping. So I would say 15 is good for both the muffin tins and the square pans. Sometimes when we're making baked items, as you can see, it's a process. So we have to have patience, right? We wish we could just eat it all right away. And if you tasted the dough, if you haven't yet, you can, and you have a little bit left in a bowl, you can take a little taste because it was pretty good. I forgot to mention that. I should have. The powdered sugar, the sugar and the butter, pretty tasty. So we're gonna get another bowl or just wipe out the bowl that you had, and it doesn't even need to be washed. And we're gonna zest our lemons. So does anyone not have a zester? That it looks like everybody might have a zester. Okay. the other way you could do it if you didn't have a zester is you use a peeler and you're going to peel the edges off and then you're going to cut it. But the zester, what that's doing is taking some of our skin off of the lemon, and that adds an extra lemon flavor. Now you'll see once you zest a little bit, you're going to have a white color underneath. We don't want that part. We just want the yellow part, because if we get into the white part, that gets a little bitter. All the good lemony oils and the flavors that we want are in that yellow skin. And when you're zesting, you do need to be real careful. It will be easy to zest your finger here or there, but you always want to zest away from you. If you have one of those types of zesters, or if you have like a box grater, you're going to go down and away from you. Always keep your fingers away before you start. If you try to do it too fast, sometimes that's when you can get a little bit of your finger in there. And I'm just going around in a circle and I'm zesting. What this is going to do is make it so lemony. You could do it without the zest, but I like to have my lemon bars really lemony. And this does the trick. You can taste it. I'm sure it smells so lemony in your houses right now. I bet it smells really good. Make sure you zest away from you. You sort of line it up and then just slide it all along your zester. Slide it all along. It might be a little slippery, so you want to be careful with that. I tap my zester to get all of that lemon zest. All these zesters are doing is they're like little knives. So they're just scraping off for us. That's why it can be easy to get ourselves a little zested. And we will probably end up, if you do both lemons, you're going to have about, I think it's about half a tablespoon worth. But I used the same size lemons you guys did earlier this week, and I just, both of them zested is enough. And then we're going to juice them. So we want the zest and the juice to make it so extra lemony and tasty. When you're juicing, if you want to, if you have a juicer, does everybody have a juicer? I don't know if that's something a lot of people have. I used it for my classes. So if you don't, that's okay. We're going to start out the same way. We want to cut our lemons in half, not the long way, the short way. So we want to just cut them straight in half. And straight in half again. If you don't have a juicer, you may want to grab a separate bowl because we'll want to take the seeds out. If you have a juicer, that kind of helps keep the seeds out from it anyway. And then you'll want a fork. So if you don't have a juicer, having a small bowl and a fork, and what I usually do is I just stick that fork in my lemon, and then I squeeze and twist around it to try to get as much as I can of that juice out of there. And the pulp is good too. The pulp will help as well. So if you don't have the juicer, then you're going to want to just take your fork, and I just really squeeze it and I kind of turn it around that fork, and you'll see all the seeds pop out. That's okay. We'll get the seeds at the end, and we're just going to squeeze it. Sometimes you can even take the fork out once you have it started, sort of twisting it, squeezing it. Sometimes I scrape some of that pulp off, put that into the bowl. Pretty much all the lemon we can use. And we're going to squeeze all these lemons. Now, if you have a little cut, like, let's see, Russell, if you may be avoiding it, because if you do have a little scrape on your finger, that would probably be a bit stingy to put the lemon juice in there because it's very acidic. So that's why it sometimes hurts when we have a cut or something on our fingers. But if you keep your finger away from it, you could probably twist that lemon. It may not get you because you're protected by the skin still. And then if it does start stinging, just get a wet cloth and wipe that citrus out of there and it'll be fine. So we have our, I'm gonna do the juicer for my second lemon. Basically, it's doing the same thing. We're just scraping the insides, getting that juice out.
Why is mine on my phone?
Why is that your phone?
I think that was the closest to the lighter.
We'll end up with about a 1/4 cup of lemon juice. And if you have a juicer like mine kind of keeps all the pulp away from the juice. So sometimes I just take like a little bit of that pulp out of there as well, and I kind of add it to my juice because the pulp just gives some more lemony flavor. Once you have them juiced, we're gonna pour that juice into with our zest. We're gonna add our sugar next and get a whisk. No fancy stuff with the sugar. You can just put the sugar in as is. We're gonna put the sugar in with the lemon. We're gonna whisk that together.
Allison, was that powdered sugar or the granulated?
The granulated. Sorry.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem. I should have specified. Now we've got our sugar, our lemon juice, and our lemon zest. So that should smell really good. And you can even take a taste of that. That's going to taste like concentrated lemonade. It's going to be amazing. We want to add our 2 eggs. So parents, when you're having the kids do the eggs, if you want to have them do it in a separate bowl, just in case you get some shells, it'll be easier to remove that way. And then we're going to put them into our bowl and whisk those. If you have a mixer, you can mix it. If you have a hand mixer, you can use that. We're going to want to beat it for about a minute once we get everything else in there. So the only other things we're adding is our 2 eggs. And then we're going to add that the reserved flour that we put aside. So we'll start with our eggs. And when we're cracking an egg, you hit it on the side of a bowl just until you hear it crack. You're going to find the crack and then we'll open it up. So you don't want to whack it and break it. You don't want to do it too wimpy. You want to do it just enough till you get a crack. And if you smash it and it falls into the bowl, that's okay. We could just get all the shell out, but you want to gently open it. That makes it a lot easier. It's a fun thing to practice. We use eggs for a lot of stuff. You'll add that to your bowl. And you can whisk your eggs in. I did not use a mixer when I made mine earlier this week and they turned out great. So we're just gonna whisk it really good. Once you have those eggs combined, then you can add your reserved flour. And we're gonna mix that all in.
Did you say that we're adding flour in then?
That reserved, those 2 tablespoons we took out, we're gonna put back in. Or we're gonna put in the lemon mixture. Now the one thing you'll have left is a little bit of powdered sugar that we didn't use yet. We're still gonna hold off on that. We're not gonna use that yet. That's gonna be something that you use after it's all done at the end. So we wanna whisk that flour in. So what's gonna happen is that once this bakes, the eggs with the flour is gonna help these the lemon topping get kind of like a custard, or it's gonna come together. It's not gonna be super liquidy. This is different than if we were making cookies. If we were making cookies, we would have all the flour in there and it would be thicker. Or if we were making like brownies or something, it would be a thicker batter. This is really liquidy. This is probably, now that you've mixed the flour and the egg in, probably not something you want to taste. It might not taste very good. And, you know, raw eggs, never really that great for us, honestly. So it'll be much better once that part's baked. So mine's a real liquidy. Does it smell good? Smell like lemon? Mmm. So I think right around now, everyone's ovens might be almost done. And if you have those, you'll want to keep, obviously your pan's going to be hot. So we're just going to need to remind all the kids that the pan's hot once we take it out. And the next step will be to add our lemon mixture on top. Now, if you're using the muffin tins and your muffin tins are done and you've taken it out of the oven, you're gonna use about 1.5 tablespoons of the mixture right on top. It won't seem like a lot, but it'll puff up a little bit and they'll end up being like little, they almost kind of look like Reese's Pieces size, maybe a little bit bigger when they're done, when you make them in the muffin tins. So if you're just making them in that 9x9, you're just gonna pour the liquid right on top. And it's okay if that shortbread dough is still hot. That's fine. You put it in right when it's hot. So it takes a little bit longer with the muffin tins because you gotta scoop each one. And then you'll put it back in that oven for about 15 minutes. And you'll keep an eye on it for it to set. And then once those, you'll let those cool a little bit. You guys are doing good. I mean, this is a multi-step project. This is a big deal, but.
Do we go right back in the oven?
Yep.
All right.
It'll go right back in the oven about 15 minutes until it's set. So I did my muffin tins, I think, for about 15 minutes. The 9x9, it could be anywhere from between 15 and 20. So if it's looking really kind of wet and still sort of jiggly in the middle, keep it in for a couple more minutes. Once we take the lemon bars out of the oven, you'll want them to cool a little bit. If you try to eat them straight out of the oven, they'll burn your tongue. And I will tell you, I did that by experience. I could not wait long enough. I wanted to try them, burnt my tongue. So they'll be really, really hot, like lava. I suggest waiting. Another good thing about waiting is that you can put some powdered sugar on top after they're cooled. So I'm just gonna show you this in advance. So when you guys get them out of the oven, you can try this yourselves. If you have a strainer, like I have a kind of a tea strainer type thing, or if you have a bigger wire strainer, those are also helpful for kind of spreading it out. or you can just sprinkle your powdered sugar on top. It does make a little bit of a mess, but it's kind of worth it. So when you're gonna put your powdered sugar in that strainer, and you just kind of shake it over so it just sort of rains on top. Something fancy that like Cherbourg Bakery does, they'll cut out like a little flower picture and they'll lay that on there, and then they'll put this on top so you have a little flower. I just like to get all the sugar as much as I can on top, so I just do that. But you can set it into your strainer and do that. It also, you can do it with a bigger one, or like I said, you could even take a pinch of it and put that on top. Just adds a little bit. Mine's, I've kind of overdone it, so you might not need this much sugar. Or you might, I don't know. But once they're cooled, if you put them on too hot, that sugar will melt on top and you won't see it as being white anymore. So letting them sit for about 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes will be good. They'll get nice and cool and set. And then you can put your sugar on top. If you've made them in the muffin tins, before they were completely cool, I went around the edges of the muffin tins and made sure I loosened them up a little bit, because they kind of, they'll sort of candy, they kind of get candied on the edges and they might stick a little. So if you did use those muffin tins, it may be helpful just to kind of scrape around the edges when they're still just starting to cool. And then you can pop them out. Or you can pop them out when they're not fully cool and let them finish cooling outside. If you've made them in your square, then you can just take that parchment paper and lift it right out if you want to do that, and then you can cut bars out of those. So I want to thank you guys so much for doing the class with me. We're off for the next 2 weeks because I'm traveling. Hopefully I don't get stuck in England next week and I'm able to travel back. But I think we're gonna do, oh, I see somebody has a St. Patty's Day project that they're sharing with us. I love it. Thank you. Is that Ruby? Yeah. So next 2 weeks, we're not gonna do class. And then we'll start up again. I believe it's gonna be Good Friday, but I'm not sure what anybody else does on Good Friday. I don't do anything. So I figure I might as well have a class. I'm not sure what we'll do yet. I'll figure that out while I'm in England next week. And just another thing, I've done one class so far as a trial run with couples. So after bedtime, we made a vegan galette sweet potato thing that was a lot of fun. So if you're ever thinking about like a Zoom night with other couples, no kids, sorry kids, and you want to do something like that, I can deliver ingredients. I think I did like $40 a bag, and I just delivered the ingredients they wanted or that they needed. And we basically did the class like this, although I didn't, get them to eat their vegetables by telling them they can jump higher and all those things. But if you're interested in that, you can let me know, and I'll be publishing something over the next couple weeks about that. But it was a lot of fun. So just something to think about. But I want to thank you guys. Have great spring breaks if you're on spring break.
Bye.
Or,
Bye.
I'll miss
Thank you very
it.
much.
Bye.
Thank you. I hope you turn out.
Girl,
Let me know what you think.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Later.
I like it. Give her a thumbs up.
Thank
Thank you.
Good
Bye.
job.
Good.
Bye.